Hello, my name is Emma. Lore Olympus, Lore Olympus. Oh, the many problems I have with this webcomic. If you don't know, Lore Olympus is a comic on the app called Webtoons. It's what I would call Webtoons' golden child, as it's one of, if not the most well-known and most viewed comic on the platform. But that does not make it good. The comic is a loose retelling of the Greek myth, the kidnapping of Persephone. Emphasis on loose. It modernizes a lot of things about the original myths like setting and fashion, which I don't have a problem with. Even though the ideas have changed, there are still things in this comic that remain very, very weird and creepy. The comic follows the two main characters, Persephone and Hades, as they fall in love and talk extensively about their age gap. We'll get into that, don't worry. I want to say before we get into this though, if you enjoyed this story, I don't want to ruin your fun. Please continue to enjoy this comic. Do not let me destroy your happiness. But there are too many things that I've seen that have made my mouth fall open in shock reading this comic. I read this story when I was around 13 to 14, and I remember liking it. Picking it up again made me realize how gross it really was. I was blinded by the quote-unquote cute love story. I couldn't see how predatory Hades and Persephone's relationship really was. I understand a lot of people have a hate boner for this comic. There's literally a whole subreddit for criticizing and sometimes just flat out nitpicking this comic. I tried my hardest to go in as unbiased as possible, but it was so much worse than I remembered. In this video, we will be going over my problems with Lore Olympus and its characters, as well as my redesign and rewrite for this concept. I'm gonna do my best to make it a little less creepy and a little more interesting, because I do think this concept has a lot of potential and it's really cool. It just wasn't portrayed very well in my opinion. Before we start though, I'd like to talk about today's sponsor, Unvale. Unvale is a creator platform made for character exploration and world building. As you know, if you've been here before, I have a lot of OCs, and this website is curated to showcase them for all to see. Social media for artists can be very stressful and unmotivating, but Unvale has a lively community full of like-minded people who uplift creatives. Uploading a character profile is fun and really gets the gears turning. I thought I knew my OC Jane really well, but Unvale made me realize there's way more things I need to figure out about her. That's because there are multiple tabs of questions and customizations that really help you dig deep and find everything about your OC or character. From lists of traits including birthdays, gender, relationship status, and so much more. You can even add your own custom insert if the presets don't cut it for ya. Color customizations of profiles can really help your character shine and match their personality. You can even organize your characters by grouping them in a custom world. If you have characters or want help on creating your characters, I recommend checking out Unvale. You can use the link in my description to create your own account for free today. Also, follow my account, it's Emma Artley. Thank you so much, Unvale, and let's get back to the video. There is so much to say about Persephone in this comic. From my perspective, since this comic is written by a woman, the perspective of a woman character in romance is very important. And this comic lacks that heavily, especially in the beginning. We are introduced to Hades in the beginning of the story, heading to Zeus's party in Olympus. He is on the phone with his girlfriend Minthe, who refuses to go to the party with him. They have a terrible relationship that's used to comparatively lift up Persephone and Hades' relationship later on, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Cut to Persephone getting ready for the same party with her roommate Artemis. Persephone doesn't have any clothing, so Artemis lends her a dress she has, and it's horrendous. This dress bothers me so much. It's not even a dress. It's literally a tank top. Short clothing can be really cool. I'm not saying that in a malicious way, but it looks so proportionally off to me. Like, the balance is so weird with this design. Whatever. Okay, moving on. Now at the party, Hades spots Persephone getting bumped into. She is immediately portrayed as helpless and delicate. Hades is at the drop of a hat, lusting after her. He is infatuated with her and asks Zeus why he's never seen her before. Zeus explains that Persephone, the goddess of spring, is Demeter's daughter, the goddess of agriculture. Demeter raised Persephone in the mortal realm away from Olympus, and she hasn't interacted with any gods other than her mother, so she's very, very sheltered. As Zeus explains this, Hades ogles her body and exclaims that she puts Aphrodite to shame. What a charmer. Put a woman down to bring a woman up. What a guy. Sorry. Aphrodite hears this and gets mad, hatching a plan with her son Eros to get Persephone really drunk and plant her into Hades' car, because the plan Aphrodite explains doesn't make a lot of sense and just seems like a patched together reason for Hades and Persephone to be put together against their will. Eros infantilizes Persephone with this line, as most characters in this comic do. It's either sexualizing her or infantilizing her. The combo is really terrible, and the context of this comic does not make it any better. Hades takes Persephone to the underworld and puts her to bed in his house. When she wakes up the next day, she can't remember how she got there. And Hades kind of explains, but the real focus is how Persephone looks at any moment. They meet properly this time and introduce themselves to each other. So the love story begins. This comic heavily focuses on parts of Persephone's body, her lips, her curves, and it's always in the eyes of Hades or someone else. But there's an exception to this. In the multiple different times Persephone is either naked or is getting dressed. I don't know why a modest goddess from the mortal realm who doesn't have any money would have lingerie like that. It just doesn't make sense for her character at all. It irks me. Rant over. When Persephone is viewed by other men in the comic, it does not read to me of one claiming their sexuality. It reads as somebody who regularly gets taken advantage of getting sexualized when she has no experience or knowledge in pretty much any of those things. There's even this joke in which Persephone wants help with her hair, since I think gods and goddesses' hair grows when they're stressed, but I've only seen it with Persephone, I think, so maybe it only happens to her. Hades, for some reason, takes this as doing S right then and there for God knows why. I have a really hard time finding the connection. Why did he think that? I know it's supposed to be funny, but I'm sorry, the squad is not laughing. Hades is just so unbelievably horny in the beginning. It's honestly hard to look past. Like, it's only been less than a day, man. Get it together. As the comic continues, Hades learns that she is in fact only 19. What? Remind you, Hades is over 2,000 years old. So not only is she naive, inexperienced, and sheltered, she is also a teenager. I wouldn't be emphasizing this so much if it wasn't the only aspect of their relationship that's supposed to be interesting. You know how most romances fall into a trope, enemies to lovers, friends to lovers? This age gap thing seems to be the forbidden fruit, and it feels so icky, man. I hate it. As the comic goes on, Hades expresses his desire for Persephone to multiple gods, and and anyone who criticizes the age gap immediately backpedals because they feel bad for Hades or they #ship it. But Hades isn't just older than her, he's also a powerful overlord of a whole realm and rich. So as you can see, major power imbalance on almost every single level with this pairing. I know I'm supposed to talk about Persephone in this section, but as I've said, we don't know a lot about her character other than she's going to college and that her life gets controlled by others a lot. I think the worst part about that is that it isn't portrayed as bad. It's actually usually seen as a good thing in most situations. Persephone just goes from being taken care of by her mother to being taken care of by Hades. She has no room to grow into her own person without him. It's such a waste, man. It's really annoying. Sorry if this gets confusing. I'm trying to make this as clear as possible. This comic has so many characters. It's hard to keep track, especially when a lot of them look almost identical to each other. Alright, let's talk about my Persephone before I go insane. Persephone's design in the comic is very simple, and I'd say the most recognizable thing from her is her all-pink color palette. This comic does not have set outfits. They almost always change. For Persephone, it's a lot of wardrobe changes, let me tell you. My biggest criticism with Lore Olympus characters is their lack of identifiable traits and appearances. Most of the women have long, straight, flowing hair. Except for heights and colors, there's really no other variation. I would say there's more variation in body types, but they're so inconsistent, with more slender characters looking more and more like Persephone's body type as the comic goes on. So I wanted to put a little more thought into this design for her. My rewrite is going to be wildly different. I hope that doesn't bug you guys too much. There's small changes you could do to make this comic better with what's already there, but I'm gonna do my own thing. I recommend reading Lore Rekindled. I haven't read it, but I've heard it's good. It's basically a rewrite, and I've seen a lot of people praise it, so check it out. My Persephone is now a hard-working businesswoman. She is in charge of her mother's business in the mortal realm, even though Demeter is the face of the company. In the comic, there's the cereal brand Wheat Mother, which has Persephone as the mascot. I like that idea a lot, but I think for mine, it would have a much younger depiction of Persephone, like the Gerber baby or something. I just think that would be really funny and cute. Persephone is a workaholic, never taking breaks or cutting corners. She's been working hard with her 1,000 years on Earth and doesn't plan to stop. She has modernized the mortal realm in ways Olympus hasn't even achieved, but it remains widely unrecognized by the gods since most look down on mortals. I'd imagine she's a bit big-headed in some ways. She's bubbly and kind, but she likes things done in a very particular way, so she bumps heads with the other flower nymphs a lot. Even with her experience and work, she doesn't have a lot with relationships and people, at least close ones. And she sometimes lacks self-awareness when it comes to interactions, but it's mostly because the mortal realm is so different to where the rest of the gods live. Persephone isn't banned to the mortal realm like she was in the comic, but she does spend the majority of her time there instead of anywhere else. I took inspiration from 80s clothing, mostly Andy from Pretty in Pink, since she wears a lot of pastel florals, and I thought it would fit really nicely with Persephone. I used a green for her clothing since I thought it would be a nice contrast to the pink of her skin. Her colors kind of reminded me of the OG Pinkie Pie, which I'm not mad at. To add to her silhouette, I added 2 hairs at the top of her head to represent a little plant growing since she is the goddess of spring. When I was sketching, I made her have a teeth gap and I fell in love. The teeth gap made it for me. I love her. Her life takes a turn, though, when she is assigned by Zeus to help in restoring the underworld, as Kronos has just stepped down for retirement, revealing the new king, Hades. In this universe, I'm not taking much from the original Greek mythos. I think instead of Kronos being this evil giant deity, he'll be a normal, distant father instead. Persephone is reluctant, but her mom assures her that she can take care of the business and that the underworld needs her expertise right now. Persephone wonders why the new king isn't capable enough, but knows it's her duty and makes her descent down below. I wanted to take the weight off the romance for all of the interesting aspects of the story, making the characters stand on their own before they met each other, and giving them a job to do together without it having to be romantic yet. It gives them an excuse to get closer naturally without a power imbalance, since they would be equals. Here she is. I didn't think I'd like Persephone this much, but I gotta be honest, I've fallen in love with her a little bit. Arguably, Hades is the most developed character in this comic. He built the underworld up from ruins, though apparently has a big stigma around him. Since he's the god of the dead, he is very isolated and many fear him, which makes sense. We are told this multiple times, but in all honesty, we are rarely shown him being singled out because of his status. I'm not sure if it's because Hades interacts with Persephone the most and she just doesn't care, or if the comic just forgets this most of the time. Everyone except for Hades' enemies and Menthe are pretty accepting of him. Hades is cold and distant, but his brothers love him, along with Hera and Hecate, who helps him run the underworld. It kind of feels like this.
Hey Goop, wanna come over to my house today?
They all hated me.
But I guess it's because these relationships just can't compare to little cinnamon roll Persephone. But I guess it makes sense, since most of the male characters in this comic love, want her, or want to control her in some way. Apollo, Hermes, Ares, random people on the street, even Eros, who got her drunk and planted her in Hades' car, inserts himself in her life, says sorry, and boom, they're friends. If someone did that to me, I'd never talk to them again. Most of the relationships Persephone have are toxic in some way. And I'm ranting about Persephone again. Okay, let me reel it back. I'm so sorry. Hades. I think Hades would be a more likable character if 1, he wasn't preying on Persephone, and 2, he didn't use his power to blatantly bend the rules for her. He often yells at service workers who oppose him when wanting to do something for her, disregarding the rules I presume he made. It's just odd. He gives her a job at his underworld corporation, I can't remember what it's called, which is an internship, and he pays her for the internship because she's a pretty lady and she needs to buy pretty lady things. That's what he said. Oh my god. He also adamantly jokes that he uses slave labor and treats souls pretty poorly. When Persephone tries to help the dead, setting out on her own, she gets bombarded by the souls and Hades has to save her. They fight about it for 2 seconds, only for Rachel, the author, to pull the fighting into a kiss moment, and it's never brought up again. Every criticism, every problem brought up about either of them or their relationship gets put on the shelf immediately in favor of a romantic moment. It's so annoying. Hades is a morally gray character, but is treated as if he's the kindest being by this comic. He has many good traits. He's kind and protective of people he loves, but it's hard to see him as a misunderstood, sad soft boy when he's doing such diabolical things with his business and behind the scenes. It kind of sucks because Hades wouldn't be a bad character. It's just hard to look past something like slave labor and see him as just a rich guy with a bunch of dogs. Alright, for my Hades, he is significantly aged down, in appearance and in actual god age. I think original Hades is supposed to be 30 to 60 in appearance, since gods in this comic just stop aging one day. It's not explained, but Persephone stopped aging at 19, so let's just picture that for a second. We good with that? Hades in my rewrite is now 999 years old, 1 year younger than Persephone, who will often tease him about that. Instead of Hades being the oldest of the 3 brothers, I'm making him the youngest, with Zeus and Poseidon being father figures to him. My Hades will be very rigid and flat. He was raised in an upscale place with upscale people, so he's very proper and follows rules very closely. He's a gentleman kind of vibes, like,
to free me from this torment. I am a gentleman. My father raised me to act with honor, but that honor is hanging by a thread that grows more precarious with every moment I spend in your presence.
Who's ready for Bridgerton season 3? Sorry. Ruling the underworld had always been Hades' birthright. And when it was finally time, he realized he could not gain the trust of the beings there. He was surprised at how behind the underworld was to Olympus, and the work cut out for him was too large for one being, so very little got done or was changed. Because of this, Zeus sends Persephone to help him. Hades would often self-isolate himself away from others, so he, like Persephone, does not have many close to him, mostly because growing up, many would condemn him for his fate. The stigma of the underworld followed him even before he was crowned. And now that he was the king, it only got worse. So yeah, he's not the worst, not the best, but he has room for that sweet, sweet character development. And so does Persephone. I think building up the underworld will teach him many things he couldn't learn in Olympus, and Persephone will open his eyes to a lot of joys in life he couldn't imagine for himself. Hades' OG design is one I don't hate as much. I mean, he can look pretty wonky sometimes, but other than that, not bad. I kind of wanted to stay away from that old money look he has though, so I went for a more Astarian, pretty boy vampire look. I gave him these crow wings to act as his crown for the underworld. Since crows can be a symbol for death, I thought it would fit pretty good, and it gave him a nice silhouette. But then I remembered Hermes, and he kind of has that same wing thing going on. Oops. Hey, if I ever make Hermes, hopefully I can differentiate enough. This might have to be retcon though. To be determined. I want Persephone and Hades to be more enemies to lovers. I know, really original. How many times have I made an enemies to lovers trope? But enemies to lovers always lends to a clearer relationship development, in my opinion, as long as it's not like toxic, just little bickerings in the beginning. And, denial of feelings is always really fun. I think Persephone's business relationship with Hades would be similar to her and her mother's relationship, with Persephone being the background figure that runs a lot of it, with her mother being the face. But Hades would want to uplift Persephone for her achievements instead of falling to the wayside. This surprises her since no one's really done that for her before. Here he is. He's kinda, ooh. I'm going to group Demeter and Zeus in one category. I lost Zeus's speed paint, and I hate when that happens. Procreate sometimes, I swear to God. In the comic, Demeter is an overbearing, overprotective mother who reluctantly lets Persephone move to Olympus. She expects Persephone to excel in her academics since she is getting a scholarship from the goddesses of eternal maidenhood, which basically is a club of goddesses that were made virgins for eternity and are role models, blah blah blah, but the main point is that they stay virgins. That's what's emphasized the most in the comic. Persephone goes to college in the beginning, planning on gaining her own independence from her mother, but that never happens, and she doesn't get a higher education after this, and it's never brought up again. Demeter does not like men around her daughter, so most men, including Hades, she does not like. Her and Hades have a feud, so they don't like each other very much. I think my main problem with Demeter is she is villainized too heavily. Is she a good mother? Not really. But some of her reasonings do make sense in the protection of her daughter. But because she doesn't just let Hades and Persephone happen like everyone else, she is seen as a major villain in their lives. Demeter is stepped all over by the other gods. When she tried to get crowned as queen of the mortal realm, Hades blocked her for his vote because he didn't want to lose his volcanoes. I'm not sure if the volcanoes come back in the story. I don't get what's the big deal with the volcanoes. Can somebody tell me if they've read this whole thing? When Demeter went and confronted him about this, he insulted her quote-unquote costume jewelry, and I genuinely felt bad for Demeter in this moment. Like, this seems so out of pocket for his character from anything we've seen. I mean, he's been mean, but not to other gods, really. Demeter's not my favorite, but she has potential, or lost potential? I'm not really sure. Zeus, on the other hand, is what you would expect from a Zeus depiction. He's hot-headed and cheats on his wife all the time. He's the ruler of the gods, but most don't respect him. He's annoying as expected and is one of the only male characters not to fall all over Persephone, which is kind of refreshing if I'm being honest. The bar is low. The bar is in the underworld. The bar is in the underworld. Okay, I'm gonna shut up. Back to Demeter and my redesign of her. I have to say it, I hate Demeter's color scheme. Oh, sorry. The green is fine, but purple just seems so random. Like, how do you look at Demeter, goddess of agriculture, and go, poo poo? So she's getting a light green and aqua reboot from me. I want my Demeter to have that hippie feel. No, not that. She's really connected to the earth and all it has to offer. My Demeter is chill and doesn't have a lot of worries or cares. She's a bit clueless and spacey, so Persephone had to take care of herself very quickly in life and learn that she had to take care of her mother as well. Demeter supports her daughter and all she does, but she didn't give Persephone what she needed as a mother growing up, favoring herself more. For Demeter's crown, I gave her a chicken's nest since chickens do fall under an agricultural category. Her color scheme matches my Persephone much better now, and they do look like they could be related, at least more than they did before in my opinion. I really love how this design turned out. Heart. And for my Zeus redesign, I knew I wanted one thing: cloud hair. I really dislike all the one color designs in this comic. They kind of wash out everything. Zeus doesn't really look like the king of the gods. He kind of just looks like a guy, if I'm being honest. Also, purple is not the color I would have went for. I just can't see him as purple, so we're changing a bunch about him. Since he's older than Hades now, I made him much more mature looking, and a beard had to be done. White and gray is what I pictured for Zeus. I don't know, it just feels right. Zeus in my rewrite is very jovial. He is more mature than comic Zeus, but he is still a very flawed ruler nonetheless. I think Hades really put Zeus on a pedestal because he always looked up to him, but as the comic continues, he learns more and more about how his brother treats others, and it really strains their relationship. Now I want to talk about Zeus and Demeter and the story of how Persephone was assigned to the underworld. Zeus calls a meeting for the head gods, excluding Hades, to meet and discuss the future for the underworld and what could remedy the problems it's facing. Demeter, being one who is talked over most of the time for being seen as weak-minded and frail, raises her hand. Zeus reluctantly calls on her to speak. Demeter suggests Persephone to help since she's so gifted in those areas. Zeus thinks about this for a moment and calls Demeter in for a private meeting. He asks her if Persephone is married or betrothed to another. Demeter laughs. No, of course not. Zeus nodded, lost in thought. Maybe what his brother needed was a companion of his own. Hera, no matter how bad Zeus treated her, was a person to rule with, to lean on. He couldn't do it without her. What's a king without a queen? But he knew no goddess would willingly take that task, marrying the king chained to death itself. He had to go another way about it. What if, he asked Demeter, we could make an arrangement? Tether the mortal realm to the gods forever. They shake hands, an arranged marriage the arranged have no idea about. But it was their fate now. It would happen, good or bad. Zeus just had to make sure it never went bad, and that Hades and Persephone never found out about this deal. Yeah, I know this is kind of messed up, but these are Greek gods. There's gotta be some kind of downright mayhem. I think Persephone and Hades would find out about this though, making it their mission to never, under any circumstances, have feelings for each other. They had a city to build. They had enough on their plate. Here they are. I know you kind of already saw them, but I gotta end it off with this. If you're still here, I thank you for listening to my rambles. Hecate is one of those characters I thought would be a big part of this story in Lore Olympus. But like most characters, she was swiftly kicked to the side for this nonsense. She was first introduced as sort of a menacing being up there in power with Hades, and being a longtime friend of his. But as the comic went on, she was more seen as a comic relief character and kind of just faded out to the background. I guess because this comic can't seem to make interesting things happen to its characters and favors Hades and Persephone flirting instead. I know I've reiterated basically the same thing I just said over and over again, but I can't emphasize enough how much this comic loves Hades and Persephone. The thing is, this retelling could be easily remedied. Just make it a slice of life story. You know, like Peanuts, Garfield style, little windows into their lives. Just make it about Hades and Persephone being cute together, minus the age gap. It scales it way down and doesn't require a lot of world building or major overarching plots. It's clear the author, Rachel Smythe, enjoyed writing them the most and focuses on them the most. I'm not sure why she didn't go in this direction. It would have fixed a lot of the problems. Anyway, visually, Hecate is, in my opinion, the strongest design we've covered today, but I still don't like her that much. I'm sorry if I'm being harsh again. I'm picky, what can I say? I think Hecate's color scheme is a little too close to Hades. She almost looks more related to him than his own brothers, so we're gonna change her color scheme drastically. I still want her to complement Hades and look like she belongs in the underworld, so I'm feeling purple. Originally, this spot was going to be for Artemis since she was Persephone's one friend and roommate, though they weren't close at all. Artemis is another female character tethered to a man, being her brother. I haven't mentioned this yet, trigger warning by the way. But a big plot point in this story is the rape of Persephone by Apollo. SA is a serious topic and requires delicate forethought when writing, but this comic treats it as intrigue to when Persephone's going to tell someone about it. Like, oh, what's Hades going to do when he finds out? What's Artemis gonna do? What about her mom? It dangles it over the audience's head and teasers like it's going to be this big thing. I just don't know if something like SA should further the plot in this manner. It just feels really, really gross. Honestly, it makes me uncomfortable. That's why I haven't mentioned it until this point. Editing Emma here, I also just want to add that if you identify with Persephone in any regard, you are completely valid. I don't want to take away from anybody's comfort. I just find that the way it was handled wasn't the best. I sketched this little thumbnail of Hecate and freaked out a little bit. Yes. Hecate is the goddess of magic and is often portrayed as this three-bodied goddess, so I imagine this is just one of her forms. She'd probably have many sides to her. I went for a more 60s look. I don't really have a reason why, I just think it fit her vibe. Hecate is kind of weird and an outcast. She already lives in the underworld and has been trying to make changes, but Hades refuses to listen to her. Persephone is now roommates with Hecate, staying with her while she works things out. I'd imagine they'll grow closer as they bounce ideas off each other, and eventually Persephone gets her on their team. Hecate is not well liked by other gods, but lacks any shame, so she has no worries in inserting herself where she isn't wanted. I think this character would kind of be shrouded in mystery and would be a comic relief. I don't have all of her character worked out, but for now, she's kind of a mystery and it's kind of fun. Here's Hecate! I love saying Hecate. I think she's one of my favorites. I really like characters that have obscured eyes. I have to do more of that kind of thing. Wow, I had way more fun with this than I thought I would. I've fallen in love with these characters a bit. I'm not sure if I'm ready to let them go. In conclusion, this comic is pretty much unsalvageable at this point. Later on, there's a big time jump of Persephone and Hades apart, taking 10 years, making Persephone 29, which I guess is better. But God, she still stayed committed to him after 10 years apart. Mind you, their relationship was based around maybe a month before they were pulled apart. Persephone never gets the chance to be her own person. She just gets passed around to a different caretaker or obligation. Her wants and desires change as opportunity rises. She had potential, but she's just getting more and more lost as the comic goes on. I wanted to like this comic. I really did, but smash or pass? I'm sorry, I gotta say pass. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. I'm sorry if I didn't get everything 100% correct, or if you didn't like my critiques on this. Please, it's just my opinion. I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. Let me know if you'd like a continuation of this story. I'd be really up to it. I had a lot of fun doing this, so comment below and let me know which one's your favorite. As always, peace.